In tonight's LEX 18 investigates a case that's lingered for decades. A trooper fatally shot on the side of a Laurel County road. But now, someone who is directly involved in the case has co-authored a book that brings into question just what happened. He says he's brought the information to Kentucky State Police before. And we do want to warn that this story discusses suicide. Lee Searcy has more.
In the book, Harlan County's Son, a decorated war veteran, recounts growing up in eastern Kentucky, his 2 tours in Vietnam as a paratrooper, and his long 30-year career with Kentucky State Police. But it's the chapter on page 207 that retired Colonel Douglas Asher says was the hardest to write.
And I thought, well, it's time now to clear the air. Even though it's late, it's right. It's the right thing to do.
In the chapter, The Big Gray Cover-Up, the true facts behind the death investigation of Trooper Johnny Edrington, Asher goes where no one has gone before, at least publicly.
Why I bring it up now? I think it's time that we clear this thing up before we all die and can't talk back. I think it's time to clear this mess up.
Asher was the KSP post commander in London on December 20th, 1988, the night Trooper Johnny Edrington was found dead of a gunshot wound while on duty. To this day, his homicide case remains open and unsolved.
You can't solve a homicide that didn't happen.
In the book, Asher says it was the unanimous decision of all those investigators, as well as the county coroner and assistant state medical examiner, that Trooper Edrington's gunshot wound was self-inflicted. I've talked to several of them who confirmed that, including the current Laurel County coroner, who was on the scene with the coroner at the time, his father. But Asher claims he got pressure from those above him back then to investigate it as a homicide.
The command staff, one of them went to the post before I even got back to the post and told the investigators, if anybody here considers this anything other than a homicide, they don't need to be working at this post.
Asher says the evidence is what led his detectives to conclude it was not a homicide. He says his post, the local coroner, and state pathologists were essentially removed from the case.
Well, the logistics was he had the gun in his hand. There was no sign of struggle. It was contact wound. It was right here. He had the gun. The gun was still in his hand.
Well, this is Highway 80 in Laurel County, where Trooper Johnny Edrington was found dead from a gunshot wound. He was found lying over in a ditch that direction. Retired Colonel Asher says some higher-ups believe there were signs of a struggle because there was a dent in his hood. But Asher says his uniform appeared untouched. In our search for answers, we went to the doctor who performed the autopsy.
There was no evidence to suggest it to me that I was aware of that someone else did it.
Dr. John Hunsaker was the Associate State Medical Examiner at the time.
There were 3 different gunshot residue tests taken of his hands after he was discovered, which had abundant amounts of residue.
He says after conducting the autopsy, he initially listed the manner of death as undetermined.
And you're saying no one came back to you and asked you for your professional medical opinion on the cause of death, the manner of death, excuse me.
No, I think they knew which way I was leaning.
We asked him if it was possible Edrington's death was a homicide.
Well, possible is a pretty weak standard, but sure, it's possible. Can you absolutely, quotes, absolutely rule it out? And I don't think you can absolutely rule it out. But I think it's unlikely.
How unlikely?
My view on that is that they will never find the person that killed Trooper Edrington unless they dig up his grave.
I reached out to Edrington's daughter to let her know about the story. She told me the family had no comment. Both Dr. Hunsaker and retired Colonel Asher tell us they're sympathetic to the sensitive nature of sharing these details of the case.
And Johnny Edrington was a good fella, and his family were outstanding. His parents were just outstanding people. I knew both of them well.
It's a horrible thing for a family to go through. So, like I said, I don't know the rationale, what the impulse was. unrelenting impulse to conclude early on that it was a homicide and stick with that. That was the official line.
There might be some who'd say Trooper Edrington has been dead for 35 years. Let it lie.
Let them say it. The truth is the only way to go. Even if it's ugly, if it's hard to deal with, the easiest way out of everything is just tell the truth.
In Laurel County, Lee Searcy, LEX 18 News.
Kentucky State Police say this case remains under investigation as a murder. They say, and it's a quote, "We will not rest until the case is resolved," end quote. We're back with more.